G'day and welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I want to go through 3 things in regards to an elevated first rib. The first is I want to be able to tell you why it's there. The second thing is I want to go through a really effective exercise that you can do today that should immediately have a positive impact on how that first rib feels. And the third thing is I would like to try and change your perspective on whether your first rib is actually elevated and whether it might actually be depressed instead. My name's Grant Frost and I'm an Australian musculoskeletal physiotherapist who is really passionate about trying to better understand the root underlying causes of things. And while we're absolutely going to go through an exercise that I find really helpful for an elevated first rib, before we get to that, I need to provide some context to make it all more meaningful. And if you are a member of the channel, there will be an extended cut of this video where we want to go through 2 really simple strength exercises you can add on top of that to get the most out of this video. But having said that, the important context that I think is important to understand about an elevated first rib is that it may not actually be in fact elevated, it may be depressed. And while I certainly appreciate this idea that, particularly when we're dealing with thoracic outlet syndrome, where that thoracic outlet is formed by the first rib, and as that first rib sits underneath your collarbone, if that first rib is elevated, it can certainly make the life of the structures that pass through that outlet a little bit more difficult. But the problem I have with this, the reason why a first rib becomes dysfunctional often comes back to the shoulder postures and shapes that you get into the most throughout the day. For example, if you are someone who is consistently working at a computer and your mouse hand, which in this instance would be my left hand, drags your shoulder down and forwards, that constant pressure over time is constantly pulling down on that shoulder girdle. Whether you use a computer or you're someone who drives in a certain position, or you just sit on the couch and relax, or you're someone who just gets generally slouchy when you do the things that you want to do. We often find that most dysfunction stems from a dropping and a rolling forwards of the shoulder, not necessarily that common misconception that most people are working up here all the time. One of the things I've covered a lot in videos previously is this idea that when we lose good posture, gravity tends to make our bits drop down and forwards. We certainly can see people in these shapes all day, every day. It feels like everything is dropping down, so the collarbone is compressing down on top of that first rib. And that may sound like semantics, but it's really important because what we then do to solve those problems can be completely different. Further to this, our best advice regarding posture is often trying to counteract this shape by telling you to pull your shoulders back and down. But as you can hopefully start to appreciate, we may be perpetuating this issue inadvertently, because if we're spending all of our time in a downward shape and we're telling you to go back and down further, then we're not necessarily looking at this with the right perspective to give it the thing that it needs to get better. This idea that we carry stress and tension in our shoulders and that we're always up here and we need to relax isn't actually the reality for most people. So in regards to this first rib dysfunction, it's important that we consider thinking about this as a depressed first rib rather than an elevated first rib, and that your best posture to combat that isn't down and back, but it's back and potentially up a fraction. Crucial distinction. I want to make sure you're thinking about this the right way. So with that being said, let's get to this exercise. So as always, in the spirit of being results-based, the first thing that we need to do before we go through this exercise is we need to establish a baseline. So depending on what you are dealing with, whether you're dealing with some neck dysfunction, some shoulder dysfunction, some chest dysfunction, some thoracic outlet dysfunction, whatever it is for you, we want you to do a movement or an activity that reproduces something about those symptoms you're experiencing. Do that first, do the exercise we're about to get to, and then recheck that straight away. Because what the exercise is, it's the very classic, very basic ball mobility exercise. What we're going to use is a lacrosse ball, tennis ball, baseball, whatever you feel is respectful enough. You can do this standing up against a wall. I'll do this lying on the floor because it's a bit easier. We want to take that ball. We want to find your first rib. So we want to find the bump that stands out in the base of your neck, the biggest bump. That's your C7 spinous process. Below that, the next bump down is your T1 spinous process, which is where your first rib attaches into from the side. Place the ball on the big bump, drop it down to the next bump, and then let it roll immediately off to the side. So we're on the spinal joint. Now, obviously this is a first rib mobilization, but we don't want to miss anything that might be dysfunctional around it, which may also be the spinal joint just closer to the spine than the rib. So we want to start there. So on the bump in the middle, just off to the side, we want to get you to lie down on the ball as always, get comfortable. You might have to roll your body a little bit to the side that you're on just to ensure that you're on the right spot. Now, the important thing here before we start is depending on the side that you have your symptoms, it doesn't guarantee that that is the side that we need to work on to resolve those symptoms. What we need to focus on is not where you feel the most tender, but where you feel the stiffest and the most restricted. So just up against the bump in the middle, get a sense of how it feels on your left side, then immediately move the ball over to the exact same joint on the other side. Compare the two. Does one side feel harder, stiffer, thicker, tighter, more dense? Does one side feel a little bit softer, a little bit less restricted? Does it feel less interesting? Because I want you to spend time on the side that feels the most interesting to you. The stiffest, the tightest, the most restricted. It may also be the most tender, but in a lot of instances, it could actually be the opposite side. So just keep that in mind. But for me, this side's always the side that stiffens up for me. So I'm here. What I want to do first is I want to have my arm up. Keeping some gentle pressure on here, I want to gently take my arm as far as I can over my head, so my arm's getting close to the ground. Once I find I hit a sticking point, a tight spot, I want to gently oscillate in and out of this, and what you'll hopefully find is that the more I do this, the further my arm will go until I hit the ground. And then even though we're doing first rib mobilizations, come down to the second spinous level, and then repeat the same thing. See if there's anything else above or below this that you feel is also dysfunctional or restricted. If your first rib is a problem, it's very likely that there's dysfunction above and below that as well in terms of tightness and restriction. We don't have to be too fiddly here. We just want to go looking for anything in the area, get it to free up, move on to something else. And we'll move down a little bit further again. I'm on, again, the spinal joint, same thing, coming up. As far as I feel comfortable, I get a little bit tight here. But as you'll hopefully see, after sort of 5 or 10 seconds, using movement to shear this free, you should start to see more of the side of my face. And then from here, once I've worked up and down some of these spinal joints, again, I can come above that, that T1 area. Again, same thing, I can use movement to see if I can shear free some of that spinal joint dysfunction. And again, as I feel through here, I don't feel too restricted through my spinal joints. But once you've done that, you've cleared a little bit of that out, you've hopefully started a little bit tight, but freed it up enough that it's moving better. From here, we then want to move out to about halfway between the line of your shoulder blade and the bumps down the middle. This will allow you to get some really good purchase on a lot of the soft tissue for sure, but the ribs underneath as they attach into that spine. And from here, I'm on the first rib here for me. Same deal, arm up, come up over the top. I feel pretty tight here. A little bit tender, but the cool thing is straight away it is releasing. I can then move across to the second rib down. Here for me, this one often feels a bit tighter than the first one does. But again, I get here, and then as I start to mobilize this and mobilize this, I can start to see less and less of my arm until I hit the ground. I can then move down again, looking for anything and everything. That one there feels a little bit restricted for me. So same deal, spend a few seconds just oscillating in and out of that range, gently and respectfully prompting it to move and to free up. And then once you've done that and you've worked all the way up and down that side, or the side that you feel is the most restricted, immediately recheck the same movements again. And for me, it just feels a whole lot looser through that part of my upper back, base of my neck and shoulder area. Again, in the spirit of being results-based, do not trust anything that I've said. Test it out for yourself. Do it and then recheck the exact same movements again to see if things feel magically better to some degree for you straight away. But as I mentioned before, there's no guarantee that that stiffness and restriction won't just come back again over the next few days or weeks if we don't then pair it up with getting you out of these shapes and getting you more into a better posture and position day to day. Shoulders being back, taking the weight of your shoulders, not allowing you to rest on your shoulders, and just constantly pulling and hanging off that tissue over time. So please keep that in mind if you're doing something as basic as a ball mobility exercise for that first rib. But if you are a member of the channel, the next thing we're about to go through are some really basic strength exercises to complement all of this stuff that we've just gone through. So at the end of the day, I hope that I can change your perspective on what your first rib dysfunction means to you, because with a slight shift in perspective, you may realize that what you need to do to make this go away might be not only different to what you're currently doing, but it could almost be the opposite. Most first ribs are depressed. Clinically for me, your first rib is very closely associated with the quality of your shoulder positions and shapes. All the fancy first rib exercises and strength exercises and mobility exercises in the world may absolutely be fantastic exercises, but they will only ever be symptomatic treatments if you don't then pair it up with a renewed awareness and better application of day-to-day positions and shapes, most likely when you're sitting. I pick on sitting because that's one thing that we often do a lot throughout our lives. If you're someone who stands and has to reach down all day because you work as a chef or you work at a checkout or something where you're reaching down all the time, if that is the thing you do most often, then clearly that is something you need to pay attention to if we want this first rib dysfunction to permanently leave you forever. Strength exercises are important, so are freeing up any of the soft tissue dysfunction around that. Good massage, neck stretches, there's a million things you can add on top of this video. But something as simple as a ball, a renewed sense of good postures, and some basic strength exercises can genuinely get you there the majority of the time. So if that's meaningful to you, please let me know in the comments down below. If you found this video helpful or even insightful, please leave a like on the video, consider subscribing to the channel. If you do want the extended cuts of these videos, please consider becoming a member. It really does help support me in the channel and gives me the luxury of making videos like this for you guys. But having said that, thank you for watching. I genuinely hope that was helpful, and I'll talk to you soon.